Storytime, but I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. As soon as I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor, I just started yelling. I needed them to know that I was in the room. How dare my dad do this in my apartment? I mean, couldn't he go to her apartment? 20 steps behind me was my mom. And as soon as I yell, she runs in. Mind you, my dad is still on top of this girl. When he sees my mom, he jumps up. The girl is completely naked, grabs her clothes, and runs over to her apartment. My dad didn't even bother to cover his dingling. It was the most horrendous thing that had ever happened to me. That's when my mom says, I want a divorce and I'm moving in with her. He didn't say a word. He calmly put his clothes back on and walked out. Didn't give an explanation, didn't apologize, nothing. A true narcissist. When he finally leaves, my mom and I start to cry. We called my sister and she came over. We went back to my parents' house and grabbed all of my mom's stuff. We didn't even have time for boxes, we just grabbed trash bags. My mom and I are living together, but guess what? My dad is now dating my neighbor. He's never apologized to my mom. They did get a divorce, thank God. We have to see him all the time at her apartment. How do I break them up? Storytime about how I'm the side chick and I love it. Disclaimers that on my storytime is sending me on Instagram. If you're gonna be a hater, I don't care. You can judge me and be as mean as you want in the comments because I thrive off of hate. Once I had my boyfriend wrapped around my little pinky, we started talking about his wife. And this is when he told me that he does love his wife, but that he's bored in the relationship, that she doesn't make him excited anymore, and that she's more interested in their children. So I told him that I would give him everything that she doesn't. I mean, what kind of woman just ignores her man? She is so stupid for neglecting her husband and just only taking care of their kids. But that's just what I think. Like I mentioned in part 1, my boyfriend has to travel to come see me. This means we only see each other for about a week out of the month. But to be honest with you guys, I love it. I don't have to see him every single day or every single week. And he pays my rent and buys me whatever I want. And of course I have my own side pieces. I mean, a girl needs company when her boyfriend's not around. But here's the thing, my boyfriend wants me to move closer to him, and he wants to hire me as his personal assistant, so that I can be around him all the time. But this means that I would have to meet his wife. He actually tried it out for a few days and it didn't go as bad. Basically, his wife liked me from the moment she met me. He didn't suspect a thing. But it was so boring having to talk to her and the kids, and pretend that I was interested in his job. Like, I have no clue what he does. Anyway, I told my boyfriend that I was not going to move, and that what we had was going to have to work. If not, I could drop him and find somebody else. But he's begging me to reconsider. He really wants me to be closer to his home. I mean, it's kind of messed up. What should I do? Storytime about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful, her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. By far one of my most asked questions, how did I become an actress? If you're interested in becoming an actor, you need to listen to this. At the time I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to become an actress. Luckily, I have a very supportive family. I told my mom and she helped me. At the time I was living in Nicaragua. Took me to a local agency and I got my first commercial when I was 8. It was for a local salon, and the commercial played on local channels. From that, I was able to do modeling here and there. No, this did not help me out in school. Instead, I got bullied because of this. People were just jealous and envious. When I was 14, I got cast in my first hair show. This was for the brand Wella. The show was basically one huge catwalk. I was basically the lead. From that show, my face ended up on magazine covers and newspaper covers. As a 14-year-old, it was a lot. My hair was colored orange, red, and black. I loved it. But again, this only isolated me from the people that envied me. But I did not let that stop me. When I was 17, we moved to the US. When I got there, I signed up to every single acting website I could find. This meant that I could submit myself to local projects, including soap operas, commercials, film, and TV. The next step was getting myself an agent. And that's what I did. I wasn't the type of teenager that went out on the weekends. I was constantly looking for the next job, memorizing scripts, filming myself and practicing, and driving around to auditions with my brothers and sisters. And why do I really want to share the story? I want you guys to know that, even as a 16-year-old going to auditions, I was never by myself. One of my older sisters was always with me. Didn't accept invitations from casting directors or producers. The fear of being in danger didn't let me put myself in positions that I might regret. So if you want to become an actor or a model, you have to be diligent about what you say yes to. Never, ever, ever trust people. I know this sounds severe, but trust me, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you have to say no or defend yourself. Self-preservation was always a part of me. At 19, I decided to move to LA with my fiance fiance. I sacrificed a lot to be in LA. I worked several jobs. 2 weeks after I got to LA, I got my first agent. And I got my agent by literally calling agencies and emailing them. And this allowed me to start booking commercials. I also decided to work as an extra. After 2 years of struggling in LA, I made the best decision ever. Decided to get myself an education. I auditioned for the Stella Adler studio in New York City. And when I got accepted, it actually changed my life. I moved to New York City by myself and became a sponge. You see, I calculated it. Every class was $50. So every time I didn't pay attention, that was $50 down the drain. My mom helped me pay for my tuition, and I also got a job to help pay for it. When I finally graduated, I got cast in a movie right away. The movie's called The Comedian with Robert De Niro. Since then, I have done movies and TV. The latest one, City on a Hill. And if there's any advice I could give you, it would be to listen to your instinct and have a good community of people that support you and actually be ready to sacrifice everything. Self-care sister out. My stepbrother confessed that he has feelings for me, and now I'm catching feelings. Disclaimer is not my story time. My dad was single for years after my mom and him split. I decided to move in with my dad because my mom and I don't have the best relationship. I was floored when I got to my new high school. There were so many cute boys, including my stepbrother. His mom was single and she was looking for a man. My dad and her met at a yoga class. They hit it off right away. I mean right away. A month into their relationship, they wanted to move in together. During that month, I developed a crush on several boys, but my stepbrother was not one of them. You see, he had a girlfriend, and I am no homewrecker. But when we moved in together, we started hanging out a lot. He was making the effort to be with me all the time. First, I thought it was kind of sweet. Like, okay, we're like stepbrother and stepsister now. But no, he broke up with his girlfriend and he started hanging out with me every day after school. We started watching movies together. We were cooking together. We would do all our chores together. And then finally, our parents told us that they were engaged. So we knew this was going to be for the long run. Prom was nearing and a boy asked me out to prom. He grabbed my arm and made me swear that I wouldn't go out with this boy. And I asked him why. He said this guy was a player, that he would only try to do the dirty with me. Then he confessed that he was jealous. Part 2 is up. Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. Once he started kissing me, we could not stop. I knew he had a girlfriend and I wanted to steal him away from her. So I thought, why not just do it with him so that he would leave her and be with me? That's when I took off his shirt, he took mine off, and things went from there. Let me just remind you that our moms are downstairs sleeping on the couch. Our hearts were racing and we were trying to do it as quickly as possible. By the way, I'm still a virgin at this point, and I just decided right then and there that I would just do it with him. I was being reckless as hell. That's when I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. We jump off each other and we just pretend we're talking. It was his mom coming to tell him that they were going home. My plan worked though. Started messaging me nonstop. And he even blew off his girlfriend that same week to be with me. Told him we could do it the following day if our moms weren't home. His mom went out to run some errands, so I asked my mom to go run me an errand. Evil much? I told him to come over and it happened. And no, it was not good. It was actually terrible. Neither of us knew what we were doing and it hurt like hell. But after that, he was obsessed. Anytime my mom left my house, he would try to come over. One of the times he came over, he asked me if he should break up with his girlfriend. And I said, yeah, you probably should. Duh. He literally called her right then and there and told her that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Then he turns to me and asks me if I want to be his girlfriend. Just to make him more obsessed, I said no. I told him I wasn't ready for a relationship. Then he started begging. He couldn't believe I said no. But this is when we both mess up. We start doing it. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I caught my boyfriend and my best friend talking trash behind my back. After my dad yelled at my boyfriend on the phone telling him to stay away from me, my boyfriend started calling my phone non-stop. At this point, you can imagine I was super upset. My boyfriend forced me to quit my job, which I did. My best friend wasn't listening to me, and my parents were just attacking my boyfriend. So I decided to go back to my best friend's house. I pull up to her apartment building and park. I walked all the way up to her apartment, but as I got closer to the door, I could hear my boyfriend and her speaking. I immediately thought that my boyfriend was there looking for me, but something told me to stop and listen at the door. That's when I hear my best friend calling me a stupid bitch, that I don't appreciate my boyfriend, and that even though I'm a brat, I still get everything I want. Then my boyfriend says, you should have heard her fat ass dad. I should beat the crap out of him for his disrespect. I walked in and told him I heard everything. My best friend immediately apologized and backtracked. She said she was just trying to calm my boyfriend down who was being aggressive. My boyfriend also apologized. I told him I couldn't trust them. They swore that that was the first time they'd ever done that. My best friend keeps calling me, but I won't answer her calls. Should I break up with my boyfriend? Do you have a bestie that's a little bit toxic? Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story. When I was 20, I moved to LA. I was so broke, I had 4 jobs at the same time. I worked at a hookah lounge where I cleaned the toilets and served. I also worked at a Mexican restaurant, I walked dogs, and I was a personal assistant. The Mexican restaurant I worked at was on Sunset Boulevard. And boy oh boy did I meet a lot of celebrities. On one occasion, I met a girl who was in a couple of movies. Is she in movies now? No, she's not. So I would say she's like an F-list celebrity. She was the type of girl that got everyone's attention, wanted to be the life of the party. And as soon as I walked up to her table, this girl wanted to adopt me. She kept saying things like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. Right away, she was acting like my best friend. It was as if the it girl, the popular girl at high school, wanted to befriend me. I fell for it hard and fast. She had a lot of money, and because I was so broke, she would pick me up and take me places with her. She took me to a couple of industry parties. This is where her envy was showing. She introduced me to a couple of people. And by a couple of people, I mean huge celebrities. But you know how she introduced me? You guys, meet my little friend. Her name's Esther, and she's a struggling actress. She works at a Mexican restaurant. I wanted to crawl in a hole and never come out. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. Well, I show up to his Abercrombie & Fitch job and I find him talking to a girl. Very pretty girl. I went insane. Pulled him aside and told him that he needed to quit right then and there. That if the tables were turned and I was the one talking to a really cute boy at my job, he would lose it and break up with me immediately. He started telling me that I was overreacting. I was being insecure. Me being insecure? Not him checking my phone every day. By the way, the girl was so nice to me. Came up to me later and said, "You don't need to worry about anything. I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in yours." I did appreciate it, but the way my boyfriend was talking to her was a no-no. So here's what I did. Waited for his shift to end, and I went straight into that Abercrombie and asked to speak to the manager. And that's when I made up the whole story. I told him that this boy that was working there was harassing me, and that he kept staring at me and grabbed my arm, which made me feel super uncomfortable and scared. And the cherry on top, I started to cry. And I told him that this wasn't the first time it happened, that the same boy had done it another time. The manager, of course, apologized right away. I left the store. 2 hours later, my boyfriend calls me crying. He said that he got fired and he didn't know why. That all the manager said was that his behavior was inappropriate. And my boyfriend couldn't figure it out. Well, he's never gonna find out that it was me that got him fired. So I begged my dad to hire my boyfriend at his car shop. And my dad did, out of the kindness of his heart. So I made my boyfriend eat all of his dirty words. Not only that, but him working at my dad's car shop allows me to keep an eye on him at all times. You see, I have access to all the cameras. And I also show up whenever I want. But here's the crazier part. Remember the girl that my boyfriend was talking to? She slid into my DMs and told me that I'm pretty. She even asked me to go on a date. I mean, should I? My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly. Here is the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. And he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because Self-Care Sister told me not to and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer, and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-Care Sister out. My husband humiliated me at our wedding by violently shoving my face into the cake. Claiming this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I'm repeating content because I was told I need to rest. I'm sorry. That's when he grabbed my neck so hard and pushed my face into the cake. Did it so violently that I almost got knocked out. And I was able to pull myself away from the cake. I started falling backward and that's when my family started running up to me. Before I could fall, my father caught me midair. What was my husband doing? Just looking at me. That's when he yells out, "You are so dramatic." No one, and I mean no one, not even his parents, thought that it was funny. Everyone at the wedding surrounded me asking if I was okay. Even the servers offered a chair and ice. Luckily, my bridesmaids took me to the bathroom, and when I saw the state of my face and my hair, I burst into tears. $6,000 down the drain. $6,000 I was only able to enjoy a third of. The night wasn't even halfway through at that point. That's when they washed my hair and my face. I still decided to make the best of it. I spent the rest of the night dancing without makeup and hair. Did he apologize? Kind of. He said, "My bad." Didn't expect everyone to react like that. And he actually complained that now he was the bad guy. The following day, my parents convinced me to get the wedding annulled. But now he's almost my ex. I was about to leave my family to move to his country. A man that is violent towards you under the guise of a joke actually hates you. He wants to hurt you. Self-Care Sister out. I told my best friend that her fiance was cheating on her and she did not believe me. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I walk into their bedroom and I see her fiance with my best friend's sister. What I actually saw was just him kissing her neck. But why is your fiance kissing your sister's neck? And as soon as they saw me, they freaked. They jumped up really quick. He ran out of the bedroom and then he just stared at me. Like he always does, just staring. I ran to my bestie and I told her everything. By the way, everyone at this point had had so many drinks. I was actually the only sober person at this party. What happened next was a nightmare. My bestie turns to me and tells me to leave the party. She told me that I was just jealous of her relationship, that I was projecting on her. He throws my purse at me and I leave. I cried so much, I was mortified. She was so desperate to make her relationship work. Okay, by the way, her sister actually lived with them at the time. This girl had no money and no job. My best friend supported her in every single way possible. Her and I obviously didn't speak after that until 6 months later. She calls me on the phone in tears. Then she tells me she finds out her sister is pregnant. Her fiance is leaving her for her sister, and they are kicking her out of her apartment, the one she paid half for. I remember this because he actually followed me on Instagram 2 days ago. Should I be petty? Healthcare sister out. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I matched with a murderer on Tinder. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. All of this happened 2 years ago, and if you are on a dating app, please be careful. I matched with this really cute guy on Tinder. He said he was a doctor, and he had all of these pictures to back it up. So I completely believed him when he said he was an oncologist. I was 22 at the time, and I realized that we did have a big age gap. You see, he was 36. We talked on Tinder for a couple of days, and then we moved over to text message. And he was so charming. He was reciting poetry to me. We even discussed the movie Pride and Prejudice. Looking back now, he asked me all of my favorite things. And from there, he started talking to me about my favorite movies, my favorite actors, favorite foods. I mean, he even sent me recipes. He was perfectly charming in every single way. Finally asked me out on a date, and we went to a beautiful, expensive dinner. The restaurant was right by a river. Then he surprised me with a boat ride on the river. The date was magical, almost too good to be true. Then things just got really strange. He was texting me nonstop for 2 days, asking me how I was, literally asking me what I ate for dinner, all over me. That's when he shows up unannounced to my apartment, and he's carrying a huge duffel bag. I mean huge and super heavy. And he tells me that his apartment flooded and that he didn't have anybody else to stay with, essentially asking me if he could stay at my place. I really didn't know if I should, but I thought, what's the worst that could happen? We already went on a date. I told him he could sleep on my couch, but that nothing would happen between us. He agreed and promised that he wouldn't try to make any moves on me. He comes in, puts his bag down, and just starts making dinner in my kitchen. He made soup and a beautiful salad. When I tried the soup, it tasted horrible. The first thing that ran through my mind was, oh my gosh, did he put something in this? But I couldn't believe that that would even be a possibility. We watched a movie and then I went to bed. I wake up to banging on my door at 2 a.m. Do you know how scary that is? He yells, I left my phone in there, I need to get it out. Then I realized, hold on a second, you didn't even come into my bedroom. First I pretended to be asleep just to not have to open, but then he kept banging louder, and then his voice got angry. He said, I know you're awake, just let me in. I finally said, sorry, I'm not gonna let you in, you're acting strange. Then he laughed and said, oh my gosh, stop being so dramatic, just let me in. But I did not. I didn't tell him, but I called the cops. Luckily, I lived 2 minutes away from the police station. He did not know this. I went into my bathroom and told the cops to come right away. For the next 2 minutes, he went silent. I pressed my ear to the door. I could hear him unzipping something, putting stuff down, and suddenly he starts banging on the door again. That's when the cops knock on my door and he goes to open. 10 seconds later, the cops knock on my door and tell me it's safe to come out. But the cop says, be prepared for what you're about to see. I open my door and there on my living room floor, there's a plastic tarp, knives, handcuffs, whips. Apparently this guy had been terrorizing women all around town. But fortunately, he had not unalived anybody. He would SA them and then tie them up and do things. But none of these women had reported him except for me. He went to prison and called me apologizing. Be careful out there. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. Disclaimer, Disclaimer, this is not my story time with Cinnamon on Instagram. Well, I show up to his Abercrombie & Fitch job and I find him talking to a girl. Very pretty girl. I went insane. Pulled him aside and told him that he needed to quit right then and there. That if the tables were turned and I was the one talking to a really cute boy at my job, he would lose it and break up with me immediately. He started telling me that I was overreacting. I was being insecure. Me being insecure? Not him checking my phone every day. By the way, the girl was so nice to me. Came up to me later and said, "You don't need to worry about anything. I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in yours." I did appreciate it. But the way my boyfriend was talking to her was a no-no. So here's what I did. Waited for his shift to end. And I went straight into that Abercrombie and asked to speak to the manager. And that's when I made up the whole story. I told him that this boy that was working there was harassing me and that he kept staring at me and grabbed my arm, which made me feel super uncomfortable and scared. And the cherry on top, I started to cry. And I told him that this wasn't the first time it happened, that the same boy had done it another time. The manager, of course, apologized right away. I left the store. 2 hours later, my boyfriend calls me crying. He said that he got fired and he didn't know why. That all the manager said was that his behavior was inappropriate. And my boyfriend couldn't figure it out. Well, he's never gonna find out that it was me that got him fired. So I begged my dad to hire my boyfriend at his car shop. And my dad did, out of the kindness of his heart. So I made my boyfriend eat all of his dirty words. Not only that, but him working at my dad's car shop allows me to keep an eye on him at all times. You see, I have access to all the cameras. And I also show up whenever I want. But here's the crazier part. Remember the girl that my boyfriend was talking to? She slid into my DMs and told me that I'm pretty. She even asked me to go on a date. I mean, should I? Story time about I caught my dad doing it with my neighbor. That's when my neighbor asked my dad for his number. I turned to her and I said, "He's married to my mother, you know." And then I pushed my dad into the elevator. I instantly started to cry. I was embarrassed and mortified. How can I have a father like that? I told him he was never to come to my building again and that he flirted with her first. He was twice her age. Disgusting. He told me that I was overreacting and that the only person that made it weird and gross was me. Luckily, it did not take us long to move in all my boxes. But then he kept looking for excuses to stay. I asked him to leave 3 times. And all of a sudden, the girl walks out of the apartment that was right in front of me, meaning she's my neighbor. My dad started talking to her again. That's when I closed my apartment door and locked him out. Could hear them talking for a few minutes, so I put on my music and started unpacking. And then I called my mom immediately to tell her. And I begged her to come live with me. Then she told me that she got into a really big fight with my dad about it. I was so angry I opened my door and just left. I see my dad and her still talking in the hallway. I didn't say anything and I left. Went to pick up my mom and I took her out for lunch. My mom and I decided to go back to my apartment to unpack. I walked up to my apartment first. And as soon as I opened the door, that's when I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor. Part 3 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her, broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? My husband humiliated me at our wedding by shoving my face into our cake. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Also, I have COVID and I was told that I need to rest, so I'm not filming. I have to repeat content. I'm sorry. I love you guys though. Before we got engaged, my husband and I had only known each other for 3 months. We actually met when we were traveling, so we didn't even live in the same country. This was my first mistake. After we met, he asked me to come visit him again. And I did. I didn't ask him to come visit me. He asked me. Did I pay for my own flight? Yes. Did I split the bill with him? Yes. But here's the thing. He was doing everything else right. He was
treating me well, buying me gifts, giving me so much attention, acting like he was already my husband. We got engaged 3 months later and none of my friends or my family knew him. And we decided to have a destination wedding. This meant the only time my parents met him was at our wedding, and my friends. Before our wedding, he and I had not lived together. I was the one that was going to visit him all the time. In preparation for our wedding, I really wanted this one specific makeup artist. Yeah, and both of our parents decided to pay for the wedding. Our budget for the wedding was $80,000, so it was a lot. The makeup artist I wanted was $3,000. I met with the makeup artist twice. This way we could try out 2 styles of makeup. We finally landed on one that I loved. The hairstylist charged me another $3,000. So my husband knew how much effort I put into my makeup and my hair. Before the wedding, I made him swear that he would not shove my face into the cake. And he agreed. Fast forward to cutting the cake. He pushed my face into the cake so hard, I almost got knocked out. Everyone ran over to me. Part 2 is up. I told my best friend that her fiance was cheating on her and she did not believe me. Disclaimer, this is my story. When I was 20 years old, I moved to LA. I was trying to make friends as quickly as possible. Good friends, not backstabbers. At my new job, I met this girl and she was kind of similar to me, but she was the type of person that trusted everybody. Right away, she started trusting me. She was just really kind. Started hanging out outside of work. And it was really nice because she liked to cook and so did I. She would come over to my place and we would make some food and just watch movies. After a couple of weeks, I met her fiance and I hated him right away. All he did was stare at me. What do you do when you meet your bestie's fiance and all he does is stare at you? It's disgusting. At first I thought he was kind of joking, but then I realized he was being super serious. He was trying to make cute eyes at me. So after that, I would never look him straight in the eye. I knew that's what he wanted, so I just wouldn't do it. That's when I started being really vigilant. I started noticing every single little red flag about him. One day, my bestie invites me over to a barbecue at her place, and after a couple of hours, I wanted to leave. Everyone at this point had had so many drinks. I was the only person that was sober. I go into her bedroom, and I find her with her sister. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I'm catching feelings for my stepbrother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. That's when my stepbrother confessed that he was jealous. I mean, I knew that he liked me, but I didn't know that he liked me. Essentially, he told me that he did not want me going out with this boy to prom because he was really bad news. So I told him that I wouldn't. Went back to the boy and told him I couldn't go to prom with him. After that, my stepbrother asked me if I wanted to go to prom with him. Okay, everyone in school knew that our parents were engaged. Essentially, we're stepbrother and stepsister. But let me tell you, after his confession, I could not stop thinking about him. I mean, his room was right across from mine. He had so many girls chasing him at school. A few days later, his ex comes up to me at school and calls me a slut. Apparently, the rumor was going around that him and I were together. This girl was not happy. When I got in his car to go home with him, I broke down and started to cry. Then he told me that he told his ex that he had a crush on me. And then we kissed. And I had never been kissed like that. He was so sweet yet so passionate. We stare at each other at the dinner table. He tried to kiss me again at home, but I didn't let him. I'm gonna have to update you guys. What should I do about this? He started doing the dirty, but I didn't realize that my mom was home. My mom was supposed to be at work. But apparently she came home early because she felt sick. So while me and my neighbor are upstairs full on doing the dirty, my mom is downstairs making lunch. That's when the door blasts open and it's my mom holding my lunch. I have no clothes on my bed. There was no way my mom was gonna buy that we were just hanging out. My mom throws the plate of food at my neighbor. He tries to calm my mom down and tells her that he's in love with me. By the way, I was not in love with him. I mean, I liked him, but I wasn't in love. I didn't know what to do, so I just started to cry. Suddenly, my mom calmed down. I have no idea what got into her, but she politely asked him to put on his clothes and leave. As he was getting dressed, my mom told him not to tell his mom anything, that we would keep this a secret. Once he leaves, my mom confesses to me that his mom and her are in a relationship. First off, I didn't even know that my mom swung that way. Then she asked me if I loved him. I had to lie and tell her that I did, so that she wouldn't find out the truth, that I only did it with him so that he could break up with his girlfriend to be with me. My mom gave us her blessing so that he and I could go out. Like I said, this was 10 years ago. Of course, he and I are no longer together, but my mom is still with his mom, so I see him all the time. He still begs me to be with him. Just broke up with my boyfriend, so I think I might give him a chance now. I mean, I did lose my V card to him, but he cheated on his girlfriend to be with me, and he's clingy. Do you guys think I should give him a chance? Here's a story time, but I needed to sneeze first, so give me a sec. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. I'm totally toxic. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead, I'm on Instagram. Let me start off by saying, yes, I do love my boyfriend. I'm also extremely toxic. And honestly, he is too. Here's a little backstory. We both met when we were dating other people. In fact, he was dating my best friend, and I was dating his best friend. I'm 18 and he's 19. So yeah, we are a little immature. But hey, love is love. After we met, we started secretly hooking up. And then finally, we broke up with them. Now that we're together, none of our friends speak to each other. They've all sided with the other friend. So he and I have been together for 6 months now. He's extremely controlling. He's always checking my Snapchat, my location, always wants
wants to know where I am, so I started doing the exact same thing to him, mostly out of spite. Then I realized he's a little sketchy. He does not want me to have his location, so I started blocking him on Snapchat and Instagram. This drove him absolutely crazy. So much so that he deactivated his Instagram just so that I would feel more comfortable. At first I was like, OMG, he's so sweet, he loves me. But then I just realized this is another manipulation tactic on his part. I needed a way to manipulate him even more. He started coming to my house and announced. My parents hated this. They told him that he shouldn't be doing that anymore. And he started talking bad about my parents to me. Obviously, this is a big red flag for me. I mean, I can deal with the rest, but talking bad about my parents? Hell no. Well, I was furious with him. He started telling me that my mom was crazy and that she was probably cheating on my dad, and that's where I learned to be a cheater too. And then he started talking bad about my parents to his parents. So his mom called me and asked me if I was okay with my parents. Guess what happens? I show up to his job and there he is talking to a girl. A pretty girl. Both work at Abercrombie & Fitch. Can you imagine what she looks like? So I had to get him fired. Part 2 is
Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women, and all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her. Which I know is so messed up. Because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a 3rd time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do?
If you're not using toilet paper for your makeup routine, you're missing out. Welcome to episode 2 of Self-Care Sister Tips. After you apply your foundation, take 2 sheets of toilet paper and gently pat it into the skin. Do not rub it, just tap it gently into the skin. This is going to help you in 2 ways. It'll absorb excess oil, excess foundation. It's going to give you a more natural finish. So if you're a no makeup girl, you're going to love this. Then take a fluffy brush, dip it into your favorite setting powder, and lightly dab over the areas you want to mattify. Once you're done applying the rest of your makeup, repeat that step again. Yes, you can use blotting paper, but toilet paper is more absorbent. This will give you a flawless base, I promise. Self-Care Sister out.
I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him, and I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. When I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? A partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up.
Story time about how my husband stole my dog because I told his family that he's gay. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My husband and I had been married for 6 months before I realized he was gay. The way I found out is horrendous. Husband, almost ex, he has a gardening business. This means he works with a lot of guys. The guys that he started hiring were all very young, very attractive. Obviously, I didn't care because I never thought that he would be gay. Well, I come home one day early from work, only to find him and 3 other guys on the couch, doing different things to each other. I was horrified. I was seriously triggered and traumatized. You see, I had been essayed by 2 boys when I was in college, so walking into this literally made me vomit. Even got flashbacks. What did my husband do? The man kicked me out of the house, closed the door on me, so I proceed to start ringing the doorbell. So I decide to call 911 and say that there's 2 intruders in my house, which I mean there are. By the time the police come, they're all dressed up. Of course, it was my word against theirs. The police told me that all I could do was get a divorce. At the time, I had a 2-month-old puppy. My husband didn't really like the puppy. He was a lot of work, but it was my responsibility. After I caught him, I ran straight to his mom's house and spilled the beans. His mom and dad were furious. They called him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. Called my sister and she told me that I should just go live with her. I go home to grab my things and my puppy, but my puppy is nowhere to be found. That's when my husband told me that he probably ran away. This man refused to help me look for him. I'm filing a divorce, but it's been a month since I saw my puppy, and I know the puppy's somewhere in the house. My husband doesn't let me back into the house though, and the cops were absolutely no use. I'm planning on breaking in. I mean, what should I do? Give me advice. Story time about my mom caught me doing it with my neighbor. This all happened 10 years ago. I was 7 years old. Okay, here's the thing. My dad had left my mom and I for another woman. So I was always desperate for like male attention. And looking back, this is so terrible, especially for a teenage girl. New neighbor had moved in that summer. And let me tell you, I was obsessed from the moment I saw this boy. I became so obsessed because his window was right across from mine. It was like a movie. He would see me changing, I would see him changing. Of course, I never told my mom. And then my mom actually became friends with his mom. So they started coming over for dinners, and they were both single moms, so they connected on that too. Now, this boy didn't go to my school though. So we basically only saw each other whenever we were home. Okay, here's where things get messy. He had a girlfriend at his school. This did not stop him from flirting with me. He would stand in his window changing, and because he would come over to my house, he'd come up to my room and we'd just hang out. Both of our moms had a little too much wine one night, and he came up to my room and closed the door. As soon as he closed my door, I knew something was gonna happen. He asked me if I wanted a back massage, and I was like, yeah. As he's giving me this massage, he starts asking me why I don't have a boyfriend. And that's when I told him that I'm probably gonna get a boyfriend very soon, which is a total lie. See, I don't like anybody at my school. And that's when he told me that he would be really jealous if I got myself a boyfriend. So I turned around and told him, but you have a girlfriend, so you have no business getting jealous. That's when he grabbed my face and started kissing me. We made out for like half an hour while both our moms are passed out on the couch downstairs. I knew I needed to snatch him away from his girlfriend. What I did next is crazy. Go to part 2.
Story time about how my date put something in my drink. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I have the worst luck with guys. I'm an extremely shy person. So I signed up to every dating app you can imagine. I matched with this guy on Hinge and he suggested that we talk for a few weeks before we even decided to meet up. And he meant like seriously talk. We texted pretty much all day long for 4 weeks. In the last week, we decided to FaceTime. At this point, I was completely and utterly obsessed with him. And then I realized that he looked like Ryan Gosling. Huge coincidence because Ryan Gosling is my biggest celebrity crush. After the 4 weeks, we decided to finally meet up. Second crazy coincidence, the bar we chose was local to both of us. Little did we know that we lived 2 minutes away from the bar in opposite directions. We went straight to the bar and started ordering drinks. We both had 2 drinks, and after 30 minutes, we ordered another set of drinks. Usually on a first date, I would never go for a third drink. I liked him so much and I was so comfortable that I decided to get the third drink. Not even 4 minutes after I finished the drink, I start feeling so dizzy and sick. He obviously noticed right away and suggested that we go get some food. We walked around the corner to a pizza place and grabbed a bite. Suddenly, I'm in his apartment. He starts kissing me and tries to go, down there, and I kept saying no. Kissing became more aggressive, eventually leading him to pin my arms down to my sides. Out of nowhere, a UPS guy shows up and starts knocking on the door trying to get a signature. I ran out of that apartment so quickly, I reported him the next day. But when they tested my blood, they said there was nothing in my system. So basically, it's my word against his. Guess what? This guy has not stopped messaging me. I need to catch him in the act. What should I do?